A couple of weeks ago, Governor Dayton in the state of Minnesota is doing something to address railroad safety here in Minnesota. Now, this is something that became a top issue after the Castleton Railroad derailment and huge fire that resulted in that oil tanker car derailing and erupting in flames. And of course, we know here in Detroit Lakes that far too many cars than probably would make people comfortable to know come through Detroit Lakes every single day, every single week, every single month, carrying oil from the Bakken, as well as many other toxic chemicals and many other things that could be dangerous to people. And Governor Dayton, in order to address railroad crossings and railroad safety in the state of Minnesota, has proposed a series of taxes that would be put onto the railroad company in order to cover it. Something to the tune of about $240 million in improvements to railroads here in the state of Minnesota. Now, I'm not saying that railroad safety is not important. It absolutely is. It needs to be addressed. Castleton was a real eye-opener. In fact, after that, they had another derailment outside of Castleton. We've had derailments just in the last couple years in the Wadena area, in the Perm area. Heck, a few years ago in Lake Park, there was a derailment. So these things happen every, year and a half, maybe 2 years. We seem to have one here in the Lakes area. Knock on wood. Thank goodness none of them so far have seemed to be so catastrophic or life-threatening, but they could be. The problem is, you know what happens when things get taxed. If the railroad company has to pay more tax, they're just going to pass that on to their customers. The Bakken oil shell, whoever else is shipping goods on the railroad lines and the railroad services, because I doubt this is going to be something that's going to be exclusive just to rail oil shipments. I'm pretty sure this is going to go standard all the way around. It would also increase the property taxes railroad companies pay. Now, railroad companies, I know a lot of people are like they have the monopoly. They're so big and bad. But a lot of the railroad companies feel pretty powerful in this way because, well, they own the land that those rail lines sit on. They have bought those lands from people. They have leased that land from people. They own it. It's why if your car gets stuck on the railroad tracks and you're hit by a train, you're very likely to be charged with trespassing on those railroad tracks. Don't laugh. This has happened in other communities here in northern Minnesota that have had incidents like that where the person didn't, God forbid, die of their injuries. So they have a lot of money invested, a lot of infrastructure. They already pay a lot of tax on the property that they own to the state of Minnesota. There has to be a happy medium, though. The railroad companies do have to pay a little bit more, I think. They have become more profitable, and let's face it, maintenance and infrastructure improvements are important. But I want to bring this up. Here in Detroit Lakes, we've got the whistle-free zone through town. We had the Highway 10 realignment project. And because of that, of this $240 million in railroad improvements, I will be dumbfounded if one penny of it, in fact, my prediction is not one penny of it would come to Detroit Lakes, and here's why. When we did the Highway 10 realignment project and we wanted the whistle-free zone, we already upgraded all railroad crossings to everything that could be safety-wise done at the time, and as far as I know, there hasn't been any changes in the last few years. Even though our railroad crossing at Washington Avenue in the BNSF line there is one of the most dangerous ones in the state because of the close proximity to the police department, fire department, downtown, and people's homes, there is nothing more that can be done to make that safer short of actually move the city or move the railroad tracks. So in this big tax money, I don't think you're going to see a lot of improvement in Detroit Lakes. You'll see improvement in Perm, you'll see it in Dilworth, you'll see it in Wadena, you'll see it in other parts, which ultimately may make travel safe through here. But if you're worried about a railroad derailment in Detroit Lakes and whether or not we can handle it, I got news for you. We can't. I don't think there's a single small town in the state of Minnesota that can handle what happened in Castleton. The reaction's going to be evacuate and let it burn itself out. That's exactly what's going to happen. So it'd be nice to think if we can make improvements that would prevent that. But the reality is, I don't know if we can. And something like this is going to push more towards pipelines. So if you're against pipelines, you might want to think about these extra taxes on rail, because that's going to make the oil companies want that cheaper way to get it to market that much more desirable than it is today.